Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from July 15th, 2022, and I'm recording this on January 12th, 2023. As always, I give you those dates so that you know when this information is actually relevant, because the market is always moving and changing. So new news could always jump in there and alter what the where the market at and what these values are. So, and as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Those are the two lists I use. Each week they put out a list of books that are moving in the market or hot in the market for whatever reason. And so we look back 6 months later to see how they're doing now, to see if you've been better off being patient, or what factors might have led into them you needing to be patient or whatever. If you've been following along, you know that in general over the last year, patience will definitely have paid off. Let's see what happened this week. We actually have, technically there were 20 books sort of on the two lists, as there were no crossovers, but one of those was just CBSI just did a thing where they're talking about newsstands. We're going up in value and we're doing better than regular editions, newsstands from the 90s, 2000s, that kind of stuff. So not really going to break that one down just because, there's no specific book there. And yes, we all know newsstands tend to be have a higher level of value and popularity when they, especially in the 90s and stuff, when they started getting much rarer than the direct editions. All right, so let's get into the actual books. First up, we have Ianu, Child of Wonder, sort of a number one here. This is actually the Halloween Comic Fest edition, and really this was kind of a preview of a trade that was coming out that was on Kickstarter, a graphic novel Kickstarter. And so this is going for Option News caused this to start this free book to start going for $15. Now it's $10 book, so it's just kind of a down, and I'll be back. There is still a little bit of value here. Not a ton, but a little bit of value on this book. I don't think there's been any more news about whether or not this is actually going to get made into anything or not. Next, we have, as we stay on the on the option news, but also a lot of comic buzz on this one, we have 8 Billion Genies, number 2. So the last few weeks we've talked about different versions of number 1. This is number 2. Back then it was going for $15. Just based on the momentum of the series, as well as the fact that we knew it was being optioned. Now it's a $10 to $25 book. There was a recent sale for $40, but that definitely appears to be an outlier. 9.8s are going for $160, going for $60 to $100. So definitely a book that I put this as kind of steady worth it, as opposed to up, because most of the sales are in that $10 to $20 range. So the 25 being high end there. You could argue maybe up and worth it, but I put this as kind of steady and worth it. But definitely still a lot of interest in this series. That I got comments last week saying, no, it's not done yet. There's still like issue 6 or 7 is coming out here in the next month or next few weeks. So next we have 8 Billion Genies, number 3. So another book on this list. Back then, the cover A, we're going for $15 to $20. Now it's a $20 to $50 book for number 3. I don't know if there's something special there. As again, I haven't read the series yet. At some point I want to grab the trade. I just haven't done it yet. 9.8 going 60 to 100 again. So about the same on the 9.8s, but definitely a little higher value on the raw copies of this number 3 for the cover A. So this one definitely goes into the up and straight cash homie category. A book that actually has definitely gained value, and fairly significant value, as it's mostly in the 30s for, over the 6 month period. That's been pretty rare lately. All right, with that, we're moving away from the option comic buzz, at least for now, and we're moving into covers. And first up, we have Man Goat and the Bunny Man, Green Eggs, and Blam. This is the Paul Green 1 in 10 Dr. Seuss homage. Back then, this 1 in 10 was going for $80 to $100. Now it's a $10 to $50 book, so pretty wide range there, but this is definitely a dumpster fire, as most of their sales are more in the $20 range than the $50 range. So this one's definitely backed up considerably. Still kind of a fun, cool cover. There's been a lot of these homages to Dr. Seuss. I think Ice Cream Man's done a ton of them, and so these are always kind of fun, but this one has definitely dropped back. Next, we have G.I. Joe, number 295. This John Royal 1 in 10 cover of Baroness was going for $50 out the gate. And now it's a $40 to $55 book. 9.8 sale going for $150. So this one's been pretty steady. I put it as steady as worth it because there are a few sales that are a little higher. There's obviously a few sales lower, but if you figure the average back then was 50, 40 to 55, it's pretty much the same average. Going to come out pretty much the same. So yeah, we put this as steady and worth it. Gorgeous Baroness cover by this kind of definitely an artist who's inspired by J. Scott Campbell. It appears like similar style. He does a lot of G.I. Joe kind of covers as well as like some Xenoscope stuff, I think. But yeah, definitely a book that has held value. So it's staying right there as steady. So we've started off pretty good on this list despite one dumpster fire. It won't last. Next, we have Avengers number 56, the John Tyler Christopher negative space variant related to Scarlet Witch. There's 3 versions of this variant. I'm only showing the one. I'm really only talking mostly about the one. But back then, all 3 versions were basically going for the same price of $40 to $60. And for the most part, that it still appears to be the case, is they're all still in that $30 to $40 range right now. A couple of them are, you get a couple of sales a little higher for the couple of the other versions, but for the most part, that $30 to $40 range for the Raws. 9.8, 50 to 80. Yeah, so this is definitely a down, and I'll be back, particularly on this version of the cover. But yeah, so this is one of those JTC negative space that hasn't done as well. I do wonder if some of the novelties wearing off, if that people aren't just chasing them, or if it's just because the market's down and people aren't chasing this kind of thing at the moment. Next, we have Wolverine number 8 from 2018. This is the Matthew Waite 1 in 30, kind of an 8-bit variant going on here. Back then, this is fairly hard to find, but it definitely spiked up to about $80 for this cover. And no sales in the last 3 months, at least on eBay. And part of that is because the asking prices appear to be starting at $130 and up, and definitely up from $130. So way higher than those sales were 6 months ago. And that just tells me, but none of them are selling. So what do you say about this? I kind of put this as steady. I would guess if you put an $80 one on, it might actually go. If you offered one for $80, but it's definitely not a market for it at $130, $150, $200, which is what some of these listings are. Next, we have Batman number 125, the Alex Ross San Diego Comic-Con variant. Back then, this with the trade dress was going for $100. Now it's a $50 to $80 book with 9.8s doing $80 to $120. So it turned into a bit of a trap. It's $60, $70 average in there. So definitely, 30-40% down from $100. So definitely a trap here. Still a very cool cover. I actually like this one a lot. There's a version that's not strictly a version of this. It's not this just without the title. He's in a little different position. There's also a sketch version of this as well. But those weren't the ones we're talking about, just this trade dress. I like the trade dress actually the best of any of the 3, I'll be honest. But next, back to a little bit of comic buzz. We have Betty and Veronica, Friends Forever, Summer Surf Party, number 1 from 2022. This is the first appearance of Stacey Banks, which was a new character in Riverdale, new Archie character that people were chasing after. Back then, rock copies were going for $15 to $20. Now it's a $5 to $18 book, with most of the sales around 10 or under. So it's, this one's definitely a down, and I'll be back overall. Definitely you can do a little better on this book. Don't know if this character is going to catch long term, that this might jump up, but for now it's definitely down. Next, we have The Mandalorian #1. Technically, this is the first appearance of The Mandalorian and Grogu, because basically we've seen him on covers of variant covers and that kind of stuff previously, but this is the first kind of comic. This is the retelling of the original first season of the show. Back then, raw copies of this A cover were going for 5 to 10, and they're still going for 5 to 10. 9.8, only one recent sale, $60. But this is steady, but I put it on the I'll Be Back side because, yeah, it's basically cover price per shipping is what you're looking at when you're buying this. We'll see if this jumps up. My guess is there might be some covers that jump up again when Mando season 3 comes out. But for now, yeah, we're just kind of waiting, and this book is just kind of sitting just above cover price. Next, we have Uncanny X-Men #266, the first full appearance of Gambit, or supposed to be the first appearance of Gambit. I know the annual came out before this. Most people, this is the book, though, that they go after. Back then, raw copies were going for 200. 9.8 was going for 800 to 1,000. And that was basically, it hit the list because we got news that Claremont was going to do a new Gambit series. Still way down from the peaks of the Mutants Are Coming to MCU buzz from 2020. Now raw copies, though, are down even further. 100 to 250 for a raw. 9.8, 5 to 800. So both of the down, and I'll be back on all sides here. Still a great book, whether you want to say it's the first appearance or not, but definitely the book that people want because of this cover. Next, we go to a little bit of MCU news, and we got Invincible Iron Man #9, the first full appearance of Riri. Obviously, we were getting news about her being in Black Panther 2. There was basically an image or something that came out showing her in the movie. So that's what caused it to hit the list again. Raw copies back then were averaging 180, 9.8 going for 600, and now it's a $50 to $100 book. 9.8, 250 to 350. So definitely way down, definitely a trap as we've moved away from Black Panther 2. We're still going to get our series, but all of these Marvel books, all these characters have not really been sustaining lately. As soon as the show comes and goes, they come tumbling down. This one's actually doing better than most with its current values, I'll be honest. So next we have X-Men #1. Yes, this is the 90s Jim Lee X-Men, and the most sold comic book ever with like 8 million copies in print. It hit the list because the M word was used in Miss Marvel. They called her a mutant, and that caused people to chase after X-Men keys. I don't know, but people were buying this. There was a huge increase in sales. Back then, raw copies were still only going for $5. 9.8, 70 to 100. Now they're still going 5 to 15, depending on kind of the cover and that kind of stuff for raw copy, because there's 7 covers of this, I believe. 9.8 though, 50 to 80. So this one's definitely kind of in I put it as steady, and I'll be back. Not a huge change here. Definitely overlapping with the prices from before. There's just a ton of these out there. It's still a fun, cool book, but there's a ton of these out there. Next, we have Captain America #25. First Sam Wilson as Captain America. And this re-hit the list because we got news that there was a director for Cap 4. And still, though, way down from the heights before Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And now back then a raw copy would cost you $50, 9.8 would cost you $140 to $175. Like I said, way down from the previous heights. Now it's down further. It's a $5 to $35 book for a raw copy. 9.8, 70 to $130. So definitely it's turned into a trap even since then. This book has plummeted since the TV show. And that, like I said, that's becoming the pattern with all these Marvel characters and these shows and that kind of stuff. Next, we have Venom #3, the first appearance of Null. Basically, this hit the list because the Necro Sword did make an appearance in Thor Love and Thunder. This is still down from the peaks of the King in Black storyline and that kind of stuff. But raw copies were going for 175 on average back then. 9.8s were sitting around 300. Now it's a 125 to 190-ish kind of book on the raw side. 200 to 300 for a 9.8. So, and I'll be back from the appearance of the Necro Sword. Still a character, though, that people are chasing and paying pretty decent money for. But definitely down a little bit from the levels 6 months ago, and way down from like King in Black levels. Next, we have Thor, God of Thunder, number 6. The origin of Gore, the God Butcher, and also you get a cameo of Null in here. Back then, raw copies were 60, sort of a cameo. You get a sort of. I know that was kind of retro done later, but raw copies back then were going for $60. 9.8 hit 300. Now it's a $25 to $70 book. 9.8, 125 to 200. Definitely a big drop on the 9.8 side, so that's why I did bump it down to a trap. And really, a lot of the sales are on the lower end of those raw prices as well. So we definitely we wrote it as a trap, but you guys kind of can see where it's at. But again, like all the Gore related books, down from since Love and Thunder came out. 2 books left. Losing my voice, I feel like. Thor Annual number 5. The first appearance of Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder. Thor's Goats, which made an appearance also in Love and Thunder. Back then, raw copies were averaging 45. A 9.8 hit 850. Now a raw copy will cost you $5 to $30, even for pretty nice ones on that $30 range. No recent 9.8 sales to report. This was definitely kind of a dumpster fire, as most of the books are $10. I think it's kind of a fun, kind of like, key. The goats were only sort of annoying in that movie, but yeah, kind of a fun key, but definitely not one I would necessarily pay a whole bunch for. So, next, we have, or last but not least, I should say, we have A-Force number 1. This is on the list for the second week in a row. This is a Stephanie Hans 1 in 25 with Singularity on the cover. This is the first appearance of Singularity. This hit the list because Eternity in Thor Love and Thunder actually sort of looks like Singularity. Or for a moment at the end of the movie when, if you haven't seen the movie, but related to Gore's daughter and everything, turns into an image that looks like Singularity. It's basically a field of stars. So people were jumping that this was actually Singularity. I don't know. But anyway, raw copies back then were going for 90. 9.8 hit 300 of this 1 in 25. Now it's a $35 to $75 book. 9.8 going for 75 to 125. So another trap for sure. So that's it. That's the all 20 or 19 books that I really talked about. Several books that kind of stayed about where they were at, but still most of the books going down, down, down. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.